Alright, another Do Not God video production. Now, this subject's come up in the past, and I suppose I should dedicate some sort of model. You have to create a whole theory of logic and spell it out, but it's such an irritating subject that you say you really shouldn't have to do this with human beings. It's like, I compare it to lots of analogies. It's like explaining to thermometers that they are detecting temperature. Like somehow the thermometers don't know they're detecting temperature. It's like the most obvious thing they're doing is measuring temperature, and yet they don't realize it. It's like having to explain to a car that it's a vehicle moving down a road on tires or something, and it has no clue that's what it's doing. So, I've often made this point. We're individual value engines. We create value by having a consciousness. So any organism with a complex brain that's experiencing sensations of pleasure and pain, or more exactly pain and the absence of it, pleasure, is producing value in the universe. That, yes, I could take a empty universe and I can fill it with all kinds of things, but as soon as I put a rabbit in it, or a mouse, or something with a sentient brain that has a welfare, that has a ability to feel good or feel bad, I've created something important. It just is. By being able to do this thing we're doing, feeling good or bad, we are making value in the universe. And as long as we exist, everything that happens matters, because it can change our condition. It can make us feel good or feel bad, and therefore it matters. Hurricanes don't matter when they don't hurt anything. Tornadoes don't matter when they can't hurt anything. And hurt means destroy your food, or not just damage you personally, but in some way damage your economy, or damage your way of life, or degrade your existence. Anything that happens that doesn't degrade our existence doesn't matter, isn't valuable or meaningful. And value is just an extension. You can take everything in the universe and place a value on it by just asking, how will this affect feeling things? In net balance, will this thing make things feel good, or will it make things feel bad? That's all the question you need to ask. Now, somehow these smart people, capable of telling us what everything is, telling us that there was a Big Bang and the universe is expanding, and there's multiverses, and there's electrons and protons and neutrons, and we know it, and there's this kind of effect, and this Schrodinger equation answers everything, and they can tell us all this other crap, but they can't answer the simple question. If I were to assess the universe and attempt to find something called value, that somehow I can't find it. It doesn't exist. There's no evidence of anything that could be doing anything that's creating anything called value. There's no sense of any objective state that is decidedly negative, or an objective state or an objective assessment that's decidedly positive. That I can't create a thermometer to take the value temperature anywhere, when that's exactly what we're doing right now. we're assessing a condition, and the fact is the thermometer moving is the value. The very fact that we are capable of reacting by creating sensation is the creation of value, and everything else again has value by extension. How will it affect the value thing, the thing that is affected by this thing called temperature, or this thing called a condition? So anyway, if you put it to them, how confident you are that if you were to get to the book of all truth at the end of the universe, are you more certain of the electron being in that book as a fact, your understanding of it, or are you more certain that, yeah, pain and suffering was bad, okay, and no pain and suffering was good? Which fact, which statement, which theory are you more confident will be in that book? Evolution, or the fact that it's better to give somebody a cupcake than a nail in their eye? This is a silly conversation. The evidence, the reasoning, the facts exist. We are actually conducting the experiment. We're actually experiencing the value. And people are saying it doesn't exist. They can't see it. They can't find anything called value in the interactions in the universe. Oh no, I can't find anything. No, doesn't exist as a reality when they're clearly experiencing it. Again, like I said, they actually are unsure that suffering will have an equal sign bad in the book of truth. That the more suffering, the worse the condition, the more negative the universe. They don't think that's a truth. I mean, this is such an inanely stupid conversation to have. Why should anybody have to tell another feeling human being that their state of how they feel is a condition, and that condition is decidedly different? Feeling good and feeling bad are decidedly different things, and they're different in this category called value. That's the difference. The difference isn't that one is zingier, one feeling is zingier than the other, or one feeling is bigger than the other, or one feeling is some kind of bullshit like that. No, the difference is a qualitative difference. One is decidedly a bad jolt in your nervous system, and one is a decidedly good jolt in your nervous system. So anyway, play this crap, and this is just, so you're saying, why is why does the human race fail dismally? Well, this is what intelligence is wasting its time doing, stating it can't find value in the universe. Too stupid. So this is Sean Carroll, physicist, blah, blah, blah.
So let me rephrase, in case that wasn't completely clear, what I take Saul's proposal to be. People like me think that there's no objective morality, that there's no...
All right, so no objective morality is the same thing as saying no objective ethics, which is the same thing as saying no objective value. Nothing to tell us what the right answer is. No, we can't judge the temperature and say, is it hot enough or is it good enough? How much positive and negative did it make? Like we can measure charges. We can say there's this much negative, there's this much positive. We can understand that the equation it either is a plus balance or imbalance, it's a negative. We somehow can't do that in any at all. Okay, I'm not saying we can get the right answer to those questions. When you start matching pleasures against pains, I would argue you're measuring really the same thing. You're just saying more negative or less negative, because it's all actually negative. But regardless, it's all made out of the, just like the universe, what's the more rational thing to understand exists? So I could say push-pull, and I could say good-bad. You might understand that, well, push-pull, all the pulls can be turned into pushes. I can see where there's a push involved. So pull isn't really an innate function. Okay, everything's really just made out of pushes, just ones that are inverted. And I could also argue that good, bad, now there's no real good. All the goods are get me out of the bad, keep me out of the quicksand, good. Keep me, from losing my legs, good. All the goods are not bad. You can always find the bad prevented as being the real substance of the good.
Way to go from the reality that is objective of what the universe is doing, which is just a bunch of stuff going on according to laws of physics, not really...
Right, but it's clearly different kinds of stuff. I mean, it's just silly not to say, well, yeah, it's a bunch of stuff, but the fact is that consciousness is a bizarrely different kind of stuff happening. The stuff that's conscious and unconscious, huge difference in its function, what's going on. And clearly, as one experiencing consciousness, actually experiencing sensation, I can't in any rational way say it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter which thing you throw. Stick nails in my eye all day. Who cares? As long as you fix the holes, yeah, big fun for me. No, that would be insane. It would be insane for me to deny the reality that pain be bad. Insane. I have to be literally insane. My brain would have to not be working anymore. That's how innately bad pain is. You can't mischaracterize it unless you're crazy.
Caring about right and wrong to prescriptive normative statements about good and bad.
Right. So the fact that we can obviously state that pain is bad and no pain is good intrinsically, and then we can make arguments about the following effects in terms of circumstantial effects. But the intrinsic thing itself, the not feeling good, not feeling better, not feeling in the improved or optimum state, is clearly always negative relative to the optimal state, and it can be understood that it is a lesser condition and that it would always be best to have that feeling thing in the optimum state. It's always preferable. There's no time in any innate section of the universe, like say again, without extending circumstance, without playing games like if I torture this one person, 5 million people aren't tortured. Clearly then, okay, you're exchanging quantities of this substance. We're not talking about the intrinsic quality. It's bad for more bad. Okay, so clearly there can be more bad. It doesn't make the bad thing a good thing. It just makes it less bad. And being less bad is not a good thing. Okay, it's better than more bad, but it doesn't become a intrinsic good, okay, because it affects creating less bad.
That's just a logical impossibility as far as I can tell.
Right, so it's a logical impossibility, even though we experience it all the time. I mean, every day, multiple times every day, we experience this difference in the quality of our experiential welfare. All day long it goes on. All day long these variances in temperature that we're measuring, the temperature between my negatives and positives, the state of my well-being. And he claims, no, you can't do it logically. You can't find this anywhere in the universe, this thing, this stuff that matters. You can't find anything that matters. And here we are experiencing it. Just amazing to me that they would evade something so fundamental to existence and say, well, like outside the morality of a God, outside the morality of some creator, what can I say about the universe? I can say it's better for sentient organisms to feel good than to feel bad. And it will never intrinsically, for any moment in time, ever be good for anything to feel bad. Ever.
But Saul is saying, well, maybe we made a mistake in that analysis, and there really is objective good. And then if we found it, it would be objectively good to find it. Therefore, shouldn't we look even if it's unlikely, right?
Right. So this is the irony. They're so arrogant. They're claiming there's not only that we haven't discovered it, that it's undiscoverable, that it can't possibly exist in the universe, that something would exist in the universe, that it would create a state of existence where it had intrinsic value, where it mattered what happened to it for whatever reason. Like I said, I mean, obviously pain, and I can just give something, okay, the ability to be tortured, and all of a sudden I get it. It's perfectly clear to me that, okay, there's value now. How can we stop the torture? That's clear. It's it's not hard for me to understand at all that something real is happening. And if I somehow tied it to myself, like there was some string between me and the thing being tortured, and I knew I somehow could control its torture, I'd certainly know, well, I'd sure have to be some kind of asshole not to stop the torture. How big an asshole am I that I didn't stop it when I had the power to? And I didn't have to do anything to say, stop feeling bad. There. And I didn't do it? How could I possibly justify that reasoning? They say that reasoning is ambiguous, erroneous. They can't find it. It's too hard to discern from the facts. What facts do they need? What more fact do they need than their own conscious experience? And yet they sit there and deny. I'm sorry. In my opinion, I'm arguing with insane people, right? That you've got to be insane if you're saying you can't find value in the universe when it's sitting right back there. I mean, it's happening right in there. How the fuck can't you find it?
So this is analogous to Pascal's wager, which says maybe God doesn't exist. I don't know. But if God doesn't exist, I can just live my life whatever way I want. If God does exist, I better believe in him because I want to go to heaven. Therefore, I want to believe in God because it doesn't cost me anything and it might benefit me an enormous amount. There's a lot of reasons why this kind of reasoning isn't very good. So let me mention one in the context of
Yeah, so somehow he's making a comparison from some silly argument where, well, what if everything we know is reasonably true isn't true? And how would that change anything? Well, I guess it would change something because everything you thought up is down and right is left, and that all could matter.
Pascal's wager, and I think it will be clear where its analogy does work in the is-ought problem. Of course,
there is no is-ought. Pain is bad. There, we're all done. There's no ought problem now. Ought to stop pain because bad needs to be stopped. Bad is a negative condition, and negative in a real way. It's a lesser condition. It's an insufficient condition. It's a condition in need of repair. It's broken condition. So you can use lots of words to understand that it is by its nature, intrinsically, not optimum.
Maybe God doesn't exist, and maybe he does, and if he did, he wants you to sort of pray to him, and that gets you into heaven. It's also possible that maybe God exists, and God would be insulted by this kind of dopey argument and send you to hell for believing it. It's also...
So whatever that is, this is such a strangled argument to throw in top of, I didn't know where this was going. I mean, this is this silly kind of nonsense where you're just going to make invisible man rules, and you're creating a completely fake possibility argument about pleasing a God who can either read your mind or can't read your mind. Well, if he can read your mind, he knows you're just believing because you think you're going to get $50 when you get to the end, then yes, there's no point. So it just depends on whether you think God is really smart or really stupid. Oh, let's play that game. Let's imagine the stupid God who has creation powers. And that we somehow want to live with him for eternity. We want to please the stupid God. And this is the stupid God that just tells us some wacky story about a hell. Well, maybe hell isn't all that hellish because who told us that hell is bad? Oh, God did. So, how believable is the stupid drunk God? I mean, maybe I can't trust him to say anything that's, the real game. So, yeah, why should I bother? So, anyway, why do all this convoluted crapola to simply somehow defend your silly argument that somehow you, in looking at the universe, can't tell the difference between a frickin' pen and a sentient organism? That you can't see that they're got some differences that are significant differences. It's not just that I have arms and legs and a mouth and I can say some bullshit. You could program a pen, right? There's smart pens now, no doubt. There's, why didn't they invent smart pens before they invented swatches or whatever you call those stupid smart watches? Wouldn't it be better to have a smart pen? Anyway, continuing.
Possible that the devil exists and is tricking you into believing this. There's a lot of things that are possible. They're very unlikely according to our best evidence and
Oh, well, whatever. There's no best evidence for these stories of possibility where you imagine Donald Duck or a blue Donald Duck or a red Donald Duck or an infinite number of different colored ducks that control the universe. Why would I indulge any of those as possibilities? Why would I waste any time with those as possibilities when they are not based on any reasonable evidence whatsoever? Nothing in the evidence stream indicates they have any hope of being anything but made up fantasy characters. Why should any thought be given to it whatsoever? Why shouldn't your analogies have to be, your metaphors at least, be connected? Just like three blind mice. At least it's connected. It has something to do with sentient organisms and blah, blah, blah. Three pigs. It's connected. Even talking in bears makes more sense because at least it's somehow connected to something somewhat similar. Okay, these invisible, fake, imaginary gremlin god things has no connection.
reasoning, and they might have very dramatic effects, but those effects might be the opposite of each other. In one very, very unlikely but possible thing, if you don't believe in God, you go to heaven. Or sorry, if you don't believe in God, you go to hell. But in another one, if you don't believe in God, you go to heaven. Okay, there's a million different possibilities. Or if you do.
So wait a minute, whatever. There's not a million possibilities unless you're willing to completely deconstruct the story into complete nonsense. So you're taking the fake fable and you're just saying, let me turn it upside down and then argue with it. Why would I think that's a reasonable thing to do? Let's read the book from the last page forward. I mean, this doesn't make any sense. Let's read backwards. Let's play the music video backwards. Why? Let's play the movie backwards. What's the point? This isn't an argument. This is nonsense, gibberish, silly talk.
You believe in God, you're tortured, etc., etc. I think the conclusion from this is very similar to something that Martin Rees mentioned in the podcast I did with him. Maybe turning on the Large Hadron Collider will make a black hole that destroys the world, but maybe turning on the Large Hadron Collider will lead to a discovery that gives us free energy forever.
Right, and there's absolutely neither one of them. Okay, one of them has a realistic chance that you could do something energetic to the universe and create a problem for yourself by turning it on, because you're doing something innately, potentially powerful, change, effect. And there'd be no reason to assume those effects are good. I mean, no reasonable person says I can put a bomb in the building and I might improve its structure. I might make it stand, it last longer. I'll make it more earthquake, durable. It would be very unrealistic to think that would be a realistic possibility. Out of the billions and billions of things that will happen because you detonate this bomb, there is an insanely low probability that any of it will have to do with improving anything about the building. I mean, you're not going to make the boat more buoyant, by poking holes in it. I mean, it's just not a very reasonable theory.
Both of these things are incredibly, incredibly unlikely, so how do you deal with them when there's a whole bunch of unlikely things with huge consequences? I think the sensible thing to do is to not take them very seriously. Like, you can't really honestly put a very good probability, a very good credence on these being true. All you can say is they're really, really unlikely. And so I think that the right...
No, you can say they're stories and put them in a category of made-up nonsense. Yes, just totally not worth neurological activity. The probability of meaning anything is so low. They are randomly organized images. The chance if I randomize with the best, most high, use a supercomputer to create a random number generator to create pixels on the screen, there's very little likelihood I'm going to have much fun finding anything I can relate to, anything that's going to happen that's going to be at all constructive. It's just going to be a lot of noise for a lot of time.
The way to act is to use your best logic and reason. It's not innocent, right? I mean, the part of Pascal's wager where it says it doesn't hurt you to believe in God and therefore go ahead and do it is entirely false.
Well, the idea that it wouldn't hurt you at the last minute to go, I'm sorry, so, I was just confused, I admit it, sorry. Yeah, so wait till you're in the foxhole, blah, 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 blah. These strategies to play with cartoon characters is just such a waste of time as a conversation. How do I best play my relationship with the cartoon characters? because Bugs Bunny has $1 million. He made a lot of money in Hollywood. I want to get some of Bugs Bunny's money, so what do I send him on his birthday so he'll put me in his will? I mean, these are strategies I should consider. I should waste time of other human beings on Earth talking about how to get in Bugs Bunny's will? No. This is a stupid conversation. You just don't have the guts to say, this is beneath my intelligence level. To have a conversation speculating about what God wants is beneath my intelligence. I'd rather actually talk baby talk. I mean, I'd actually rather have a conversation about goo goo and gaga.
Certainly can hurt you to believe in God because belief has consequences. Likewise, the belief in objective truth.
Okay, so here we go. The belief in the idea that there are things in the universe that could possibly manifest a condition that is meaningful. That it actually is substantially different. It's not just matter that can have anything happen to it and it doesn't have any consequence because it will not feel pain. And recognizing that there are other things in the universe that what happens to them does matter because they will feel something. They will have a pattern of neural activity. They'll create a pattern that is called pain or suffering or anguish or torment. It will be intrinsically, as the fluid moves in the brain, so to speak, the electricity moves, it is by its very intrinsic nature, in terms of how it flows, the pattern that exists, that pattern of neural activity is, in fact, always bad. If it happens, that pattern to me, or it happens to my sister, or it happens to you, or it happens to a duck, it doesn't matter. It's a bad pattern.
Good, objective morality, would also have consequences. What if your objective morality said gay marriage is bad, right? I mean, there are people who believe that there is objective morality that says that.
No, they don't. So again, that's a nonsense statement, right? They believe in objective reality given to them by God. Now, that's not objective reality, okay? That's not making a rational theory. They don't have a rational theory of investigation where they deduced the truth. They just accepted some statement by some person 2,000 years ago about some story they heard. So that's hardly the same thing as saying they are in any way objectively assessed reality, put on their best pair of glasses to view it and analyze it, and drew a conclusion. Those aren't people that believe in electrons and protons and all this other stuff. They're not investigators saying what's reality. They're not describing reality. They're just telling you the story they heard that says this is reality. So they haven't done any of this logical process, so you can't say they have some opinion that could ever be called objective, because it's clearly been subjectively, narrowly defined by a silly story. There's nothing about it that is unbiased or fairly observed or in any way suitable to the word objective, which would be seeing it from all points of view and seeing every bit that you can see. It insults the word objective to say me telling you what somebody told me is objective evidence in a trial, for example. No, we call that hearsay. We call that something completely different.
That can lead to real harm to real human beings. So I'm entirely unconvinced by all of these arguments that try to boost up some really, 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 really unlikely thing by saying, well, it's harmless to believe it and its consequences are enormous. If its consequences are enormous, it's never harmless or harmful to believe it. You should think about what it means to believe it.
Well, just think about the fact that what if you're wrong about this objective value thing? So what if you're completely wrong and the book of truth has written in it, at the end of the universe or whatever, it has written in it that, yes, the little bunny rabbit had a condition, good and bad condition. And the fact is that you didn't care, you didn't take care of the little rabbit, you didn't protect it from harm, and it experienced more harm than it should have because you didn't intervene. So you in the world create all kinds of situations and circumstances where all kinds of pain and suffering were experienced, and you let it continue. You didn't stop the raping, so to speak. You didn't stop the exploitation. You just sat around, made stupid fucking videos about silly fucking concepts like we're in multiverses and everything's happening everywhere. You know, you just talked shit and wasted your goddamn time and wasted your opportunity to do something good because you couldn't bother just looking around and saying, is there anything valuable? Oh yeah, the welfare of human beings is valuable. Well, lots of other animals have brains that are feeling good and bad, so I guess they're all valuable. Wow, there's a lot of value shit here. It's not hard to find. It's really easy to find. You step on it every day, probably. You know, something that's going to go, ouch, that didn't feel very good. Now, most of the things you step on, you probably did them a favor because now they didn't die of cancer. But realistically, every day we are facing all kinds of value equations where the fact is we can cause substantial harm and we won't experience it, so we won't know about it, but it's real. And you're just playing along saying, oh, it doesn't matter, there's no value. So in the truth book, it's going to be written down, Sean Carroll was an asshole. Because here the evidence was all over the place. There's more evidence of this value thing than there is evidence of this electron thingy, or the proton thingy, or the quark thingy, or the Big Bang thingy. All the things you believe in are so confident that you can spew all this crap about how they exist. All that shit is less provable than the fact that suffering be bad. Okay?
You should properly give it the tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of likelihood and go on with your life just not believing that it's true. Paulina Barron says, in your interview with...
All right, so that was such an evasion, right? You start off, oh yeah, there's no such thing as objective or rational morality. And then he just wimped out into a whole conversation about why we shouldn't indulge fairy tales. Sort of. Well, there's some chance the fairy tale is true. No, there really isn't. Okay, the Three Bear story, I'll bet you, real money, no chance it's true. Shit. Well, let's just listen to the next question for the fun of it, but it's probably going to be something physicsy, so forget it.
Carl Friston, it was not quite clear to me whether he makes a distinction between unconscious instinctive predictions, which our brain makes all the time, and conscious rational predictions, or does he treat them all the same?
All right, so this is a nice subject, intuition versus thoughtfulness. And that's clearly all it is. I mean, you can really figure this out, right? That there's shortcuts. You know, it's almost, let's see, analogies. Idiot lights on your car. You know, they can be detecting something, you know, the real specific thing. And they just say, okay, over this arbitrary number, beep, you know, kind of thing. And but they're not giving you the details of the actual temperature. Maybe the actual temperature isn't so bad, and combined with other circumstances, it would be okay if it's a little bit warm, because it would be expected, because other things are happening and it can get a little bit warm. So it's a buzzer that's just, you know, really loosely associated with maybe there's a problem, because it's trying to be proactive. It's trying to be prophylactic and prevent further trouble. But it doesn't really mean you're really in trouble, kind of thing. And so your intuition is kind of the same kind of mechanism. I mean, you're triggered by words, and those triggers are set up by a certain amount of tension you have. So depending on your day, the color red could be trigger. But maybe the other systems are running so well that all the triggers are just turned off, turned down a little bit, so now you're not triggered by red anymore. And you know, that comes up and you just smoothly sail over it. So intuition just has to do with a balance of where the state of bubbliness inside of your word soup, you know, what trigger, how triggerable you are because of recent conversations or recent events. You know, somebody you know was just raped, and now you become very focused on the word rape, and rape is, you know, a big word, and you become rape triggered, and blah 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 blah. So that's all. Intuition just has to do with the fact that everything has to be shortcutted a little bit. But we can take time and go through it, you know, go through the real mixture of the soup and see what's actually, oh yeah, I know why I'm triggered by that, because that happened yesterday. I know why that, okay, I'm just a little reactive, I'm, you know, a little bit preoccupied by this subject, And you can see it if you give time to allow the process to show itself. So you just dig in a little bit deeper and you'll see more. And that's what thinking is. Thinking is just saying, go ahead, let the guns go off, and you'll see all of them, and you can see the relative intensity of these different thought trains that are running, however you want to metaphor it. The pattern, you're allowing more pattern to bubble, and through that process you can see if, well, this trigger I had was just a little bit of extra red that bled in, but if I wait a little bit, if I think through it a little bit, I'll see all the blue and all the green and all the other colors that are the real mixture. The mixture has a lot of different things in it, and they're all not perfectly connected, and so sometimes little threads of color fly through, but it's not a color that's really in the mix. It's only 1% of the mix, but every now and then that color swirls to the top and becomes important. But if you give it a second, you'll see that, oh, that was just a swirl, and that swirl just goes away, and then you see your native state is some other state. Anyway, so I'm just trying to find a way to metaphor this difference between the first thought, the first impression, the undetailed view. Maybe that's the way to do it, right? You're far away from something and you look at it and it just says blue and a little bit of red. You don't know quite what it is, and the closer and closer you get, the more and more resolved it gets. So thinking is just going, let me see these pixels closer and closer, because I know there's a pattern. No, there's something else happening there, but I don't know quite what it is. So my intuition is a reaction, but that reaction might have nothing to do with the real detail in the pattern. So it could be a picture of a rose or a butterfly, but from a distance I'm just seeing something that's too red or too orange, and I don't like that color.
That's actually a really good question. I'm not exactly sure, so my guess, please do not attribute this to Carroll, because it's my guess, is that he's thinking of our unconscious instinctive predictions. When he says that, the brain works in a certain way so as to minimize free energy.
All right, let's just understand all statements you make, all thoughts, intuitional or not, are subconscious. Your consciousness is only here, this little speck. This is it. This is all you see of consciousness. All right, I mean, it's a tiny little thing, consciousness. You just see the script being thrown in front of you. You do not consciously make sentences. I didn't consciously start talking like James T. Kirk. I didn't consciously have a mannerism. I didn't consciously emphasize these words. I didn't do any of it through any conscious thinking process where I did something. No, the subconscious creates all of it. You just experience it. So I would analogize it to your brain has a projector, the brain creates a screen, and you, whatever you want to call that, is tied to the chair, okay? And your eyes are forced open, and you don't do a damn fucking thing. You just experience it, both coming in and going out. I just did a going out. Everything that happens has nothing to do with you. You're a spectator. You're watching your brain do braining. You do not do anything. You're a victim tied in the chair, watching you be you, whatever that means.
Etc. That is what the brain does when it's just getting through the day unconsciously, when it's doing its system one kind of work. When it's actually cognitive, when you're actually consciously, rationally thinking about things, I don't think that there's any analogous free energy argument.
Okay, free energy argument. I mean, it's just so silly to have these stupid arguments about the energy in your brain. It's just retarded. Your brain is made of neurons that have these little tentacles and synapses, and real events happen to record data, and that's all. They're data streams. They're branches, they're roots, they're however you want to call it, they're tracks. And you either connect a track or disconnect a track, and that's all you can really do is connect memory tracks, mix memory tracks. So our vocabulary is all stored, words are all stored in different variations of them, little pieces of them, and we're able to say the words with certain emphasis, or in certain, we can even speak a different language, or we could speak with an accent. We can do lots of things to change the way those little words are put together, those memories, but that's all there is. There's just those bits of stored information that are called V and B and 2 and 3 and all that kind of crap, and that's all it is. And there's no energy involved in any of this crap in any more sense than, you know, switching little switches, and we have to have enough energy to do the little switching part. So this is all just horseshit. Now, the difference between being asleep and being awake is an interesting subject. Now, he called it conscious and unconscious, which is sort of dangerous, because obviously when you're dreaming, you're conscious. You're just in a different kind of consciousness. I mean, when I go to sleep, the first thing that happens now, I mean, it's funny how, through your life, the process of sleeping does change some. But the first thing that happens now is the wall moves right up to the surface of my eyes. And I see the wall. It's right there. It's just a few inches from my face. And I know it's not there, but my brain sees it there, through my eyelids. It's seeing the wall. It's darker and all that kind of stuff, but it's the wall. I mean, it's, quite clearly the wall is so my brain is doing that for some reason. And then it makes up the whole theory of your adventure for the evening, whatever that will be. The trials and tribulations, your saggy underwear, or, your sock has a hole in it, or whatever the fuck is happening to you in your dream world of silliness. But it's clearly doing the same thing you're doing when you're conscious, in the conscious state, in the same thing, in the sense that you are experiencing input and output. It's just that you're not doing it with your physical senses anymore. So you're not doing it with your actual arms and legs, and you're not doing it with your actual eyeballs and ears and all that kind of stuff. You're doing it completely synthesized in the brain part instead of the sense part. So the brain is still sensing, but it turned off the sensors. I don't know how to, but it's obviously has some pathways that are still open, and those pathways are the internal pathways. So it's not letting the outside in, but its internal rotation of the projector is still taking place. The projector is still running. How to metaphor that part. There's just no reality. Yeah, there's just no sense data on the screen. So the screen isn't being mixed with any real perceptual, real-time sense data. It's just having imposed on it all the memory data. And the memory data has been manipulated, the concepts of the memory data, into stories. And it tells a story. Just like your brain does all the time. It's narrating your life. The narrator starts telling a story. And the reason why it gets silly is because, the script isn't very well written. But it's still clearly a story. My subconscious is telling a story. That's how I have a dream. It tells the dream story.
You can override almost any simple kind of minimization procedure. Not to say there's not a minimization procedure, but it would be a complicated one, not something simple like free energy. Johnny said...
So I don't even know how they got onto energy from the difference between different states of consciousness. I just don't know why they're mixing energy and conscious states. That just sounds so silly.
In Dragon Ball Z, they have gravity chambers, where the gravity is set higher, allowing them to train there and become much stronger when going back to normal gravity. Is there any merit to that idea in the real world, or is it just silly?
Yes, it's just silly, but clearly, if you got a big enough piece of mass, you could create a hollow mass, and you could create anti-gravity and all kinds of different levels of gravity, so blah, 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 blah. But you're not going to do it with a gun. You're not going to do it with anything other than matter. You need matter to make gravity. Now you could do it with like magnetic boots and different other mechanisms, to get the same sensation. You could duplicate the sensation with other forms of energy, but it would require you to, say, wear a magnetic suit, for example, or something. Anyway, probably enough of this, because it's really not connected with this channel and such. So the two subjects seem adequate enough. But the real takeaway from this is why do smart people engage in these silly conversations? I mean, they're just silly. to be at all confused about number one, value. And when you clearly can observe your consciousness, you can know there's clearly a value difference. It's really in the book, in the end of the universe. I'm sure it says in there, nail in the eye, bad. Cupcake, good. I'm sure it says those things in the book. The difference. There's a cavern of difference between your best feeling and your worst feeling. A cavern of value difference. I'm sure that's a statement that's perfectly agreeable within the Book of Truth. That theory is so good, okay, there's just no chance it could be wrong, that actually pain is a good thing, that we were actually having fun while we were having pain, and that the inverse is true, that somehow we were having a horribly negative experience while we were being relieved of pain, or relieved of tension, relieved of aggravations, and felt euphoric. That was a terrible thing that happened. I'm sure that's not what the book says. And then brain function's always kind of a fun subject, but there's just no mysteries to it. You're just a robot. You're just regurgitating old past experiences that your brain recorded in different kinds of pieces with different kinds of emphasis, and that has created the thing called you. And your consciousness is just watching what your brain does. You're just watching yourself be you. That's all you can do. You can only watch. You can't do anything about you doing you. You will continue to do you, whether you like it or not. Now, you can like what you does. You will figure out something and say, wow, it's good myself figured that out. I'm very glad that my you figured that out. My me, my brain. And you could gain a sense of satisfaction that your brain figured something out. But you didn't do it. Your brain did it. Alright, anyway. Till the next time, and such, and so forth and whatnot. So many just aggravating. Again, I just have to emphasize, there really shouldn't be room for all of this diversity of opinion. The facts are the facts. They're right here in front of us to look at. How can we be disagreeing about these kind of things? Like, we can't know that what happens to this piece of plastic doesn't matter. That I can burn it, I can do anything to it, and no value problem will at all exist. As long as it isn't related to this was somebody else's dinner, and I've deprived them of their dinner. So as long as that's not true, nothing can happen. I can do anything to this just about. It just couldn't matter. But you can't do the same thing to this and say it doesn't matter. This. And that's a complex theory. That's a problematic theory. It's insane. Again, this is like, you can't get the ABCs right, and they're trying to tell you the universal XYZs, and they can't even get this ABC thing done. And you people have confidence in these things called intellectuals. They're fucking retards. They're so caught up in their vocabulary. They're so in love with their words and their equations and their horse shit that they have completely obliterated reality and turned it into some dopey bullshit definition that somehow they can evade now the meaning of actual words. Words don't have any meaning anymore. They'll tell you that water isn't really wet. Even though we invented the word to describe the quality of water. No, that's not how we invented the word. God told us to say wet. Come on. It's just too stupid. We know where bad comes from. Nothing was ever good or bad in the universe until some feeling thing sat there and looked at it and said, oh, that's a nice sunset. It makes me feel good. It made them feel something. And by feeling something, they labeled it good or bad. And that's how it all started. So it's always about feelings. That's the origin of the word. There was no bad until a feeling thing showed up and said, that makes me feel bad. Oh, okay, that must be bad then. We have found it. There we go. Let's label now everything with how it affects feeling things. And we can know what the value landscape is. So again, this is, this sort of is the value landscape argument from what's his face. That this just isn't that hard to detect. It's not that invisible, this idea, and understanding the idea that what's going on in sentient brains is a big fucking deal. Alright, anyway, till next time, and such. I mean, it's an argument. You're just saying, why do I have to have this argument with organisms that know the pain of the whip? They've felt it, and they're saying whips don't exist. What the fuck are you talking about? Look at the scars on your fucking face, you idiot. Whips don't exist?